it might just be my ears, but I detected the slightest note of sarcasm. Dear. Good morning. Sorry. First mistake. Good afternoon. Welcome back to sunny Indianapolis. My name is Fred Van Dorp. I am the Settlement Director at the State Auditor's Office, and I am pleased as punch to be here. We're going to try to do this presentation by the numbers, which means that this is the part of the presentation where I apologize for not having my slides to you in advance. The State Board of Accounts gives us ample time and a handful of reminders during the course of the last couple of weeks, letting us know that the conference is coming up, letting us know that they need those, and letting us know that if we provide them in a timely manner, they can make sure they get to you. And so, my bad. Now, as we've done in the past, what we'll end up doing is sending out a mass email with the slides that we have from the presentation. We'll end up posting them on our website. We will send them to the State Board of Accounts. But it means that a few of the slides that I'll actually have behind me might be a teeny bit on the tiny side. If you'll just bear with us during that. If you are looking at the schedule, the State Auditor's Office will be presenting on both Wednesday and Thursday, or today and tomorrow. The presentation today will focus largely on the previous 2 months and the following 3 months. So we'll be talking about the electronic payment policy. We'll be talking about the June settlement, and then we'll ultimately work our way around to preparation for the December settlement, as well as an update on the Gateway project. Now, I apologize, sometimes I forget my manners. I should have started by introducing the newest member of our staff. David Simpson is here in the front row. Today is day 90 for David, so he won't be presenting at this time, but it'll be a name that you'll start to see more often. A lot of the emails, he'll be a full participant during the December settlement process. I have given him a challenge of memorizing everyone's names that he is meeting so far today. So, if you will indulge me, and on the count of 3, if you will say your name out loud. David, if you'll stand up, and turn around. Okay, and if on the count of 3 we will all say our names, it'll save him time from learning them one at a time. So on 1, 2, 3. All right, so we've got a long presentation scheduled today. And so the next thing I'm going to do is turn it over to our former newest employee, Zuong Vu, who will be giving you a short presentation on the electronic payment policy. Once she finishes, I'm going to come back up and go... I'm going to give you a presentation on a couple other topics, and then finally I'll turn it over to our closer, Ryan Petter. He's got some closing remarks that he would like to make. Now, it wasn't too long ago that I was the new guy in the settlement department, and I remember giving my first presentation to this group and looking out on a sea of strangers and being as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Now when I look out, I see 6 Gales, 3 Kathys, Shannon and Lori, Monty, Randall, Tim. I trust that Zuong's presentation is going to be fantastic, but if you guys will extend her the same warm round of applause that you guys are famous for, I'd appreciate it. So, without further ado, let me turn it over to Zuong Vu.
Good afternoon. My name is Zuong Vu, the new member of the Settlement Department from AOS. So today I want to talk about the electronic payment policy. Overview, my presentation today will address 5 questions. Why are we doing this? What is this policy? Who needs to follow it? The process of the policy enrollment, and what is the result if not comply. So first, let's talk about the first question. Why are we doing this, or the reasons behind the policy? The reasons behind this policy is rooted from many disadvantages of our history using checks as a method of payment. So, first of all, there's no security involved with using check. So we have for the June settlement, we have the deadline on June 30, and for the December settlement, we have the deadline of December 31st. However, we may not receive your payment even you put the check in the mailbox 5 days before the deadline. There's also a possibility of the check getting lost or damaged when delivery. The second disadvantages of submission through mail is the difficulty in management. There was 150 checks that arrived the Auditor of State last June for the settlement payment only. If we added the payment from the court, it would be much more than that, and this would create a large amount of paperwork for us. So to illustrate, please see, this is the picture of Brian holding 30 checks with $8 million worth. And all of those checks just arrived from one day on June 6, 2016, so just last June. Also, okay, so another disadvantage is the delay in time. The check may go to another department or other government agency, and it takes time to route back to us. And also there's a lag between the time that the check got into the mailbox and then leave your office and the time it arrives to our department. All of the delays above will create the inefficiency in and impact the Indiana AAA credit rating. How so? So on the day that we need to report to the CAFR report, the amount that we actually collect may not less than the amount that we were told that we predict that we will collect for that settlement this season. Okay, so the reason behind the policy is because of that. And when we move to the electronic payment, we will have those advantages of lower transaction costs, increase the speed, higher security, and improve the efficiency. Okay, so what is this policy? On July 2016, on the 15th, we implement this official electronic payment policy, and all payments sent to the AOS should be electronically. This means that starting from this December settlement, all the payment for the settlement should also be transferred electronically. Please notice that even the policy took effect since July 15, since then, we still deposit some checks sent from counties, but the grace period has ended. So we are expecting that all electronic payment made to us in the December settlement. And now we know about the timeline of the policy, we know the reason behind, and I will move to address the object of the policy. So the legislative explicitly expressed their intention moving toward this policy. In the IC 4712 Section 10, EFT for all court costs and settlement-related payments. All entity who will send a payment to AOS is subjected to this new policy. So it means that all counties, 92 counties, all courts at different levels, and other agencies that want to send us a payment will need to submit the payment electronically. Please notice that this is not the state policy. Other government agencies like SBA, SBOA have their own payment policy. And payment to those government agencies should not be sent to us. Only the payment sent to us will be electronically. So what type of payments that is the object of the policy? It's for all the fines and forfeitures, all the settlement-related collection, like settle excise, settle fines and fee, and also for the judge's supplemental payment, or all other infrequent payment to the AOS. So now I will quickly recap all the steps for the electronic payment enrollment process. First, we sent our email and posted electronic payment agreement on our website. Step 2, counties complete the form and send it back to us. Step 3, AOS will respond with our financial institution information. And step 4, you will bring that information to your bank and then start paying us electronically. Really easy. So the current situation is that 80 counties out of 90 has submitted the agreement to AOS. Only 12 counties has not submitted the form yet. We will follow back with all 12 counties after this conference. And among those 12 counties, already Miami, Scott, and Wells County already sent it electronically. So thank you guys. Are you guys here today? Wells, Miami, and Scott County. Okay, that's good. Okay, and then so I want to make sure that you have all the information, and then when the time comes, the payment come to us will be electronically. So we will follow up with all 12 counties after this conference. Okay, so let's move to the last question. What is the consequence of non-compliance? From July 15, and then after the grace period expires, which is already, all the checks that come to us will be returned. So, which means that for the coming settlement season, any checks sent to us will be returned to the counties. Also, for any failure to secure a waiver or comply with a new policy, we reserve the right to charge interest, charge damages, or filing suit to recover delinquent funds. And this is the exert of the court that gives us this choice. However, we hope not to do this. So to recap, here's our 4 points of my presentation today. The changes takes effect as of July 1st of this year and is being made in an effort to increase security, manageability, and predictability of funds remitted to the state. Second, we will require all the payments sent to us, to auditor of state, to be made electronically. You can use either ACH or wire transfer. And third, if your county has not submitted the agreement, please contact us or file the agreement on our website. And last but not least, we no longer receive check for payment, and check will be returned if you continue to send us. And thank you for your listening today. I hope to work with you in the future. And I will leave the stage for my department director, Mr. Fred Mandel. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Zuong. There's a couple points, just want to make sure I hammer those home. The grace period has ended on Monday. We received our first paper check. There was a county that submitted their fourth quarter judge's supplemental salary, and I sent it back to the county. This is the official policy of the office. So, although that county issued us a check, they had enrolled in the process. So to prevent this issue from happening in December, make sure that in addition to enrollment, that your policy is in addition to making sure that you're enrolled in the policy, make sure that those payments, that there's a policy in place to make sure those payments do actually make it to us electronically. The second point that I wanted to cover was there were a couple of the early adapters that sent payments that should have gone to State Board of Accounts or should have gone to the budget agency, ended up going into the state auditor's bank account. So wanted to say again that this isn't the policy for the state of Indiana. The only payments that would be included in this policy are the ones that you had traditionally remitted directly to us. So as explained in the policy, we're talking the different payments associated with settlement, fines and forfeitures, fines and fees, and those judges' supplemental salaries. State Board of Accounts and Paper checks should still be submitted directly to State Board of Accounts and directly to the budget agency. Okay. All right. So let's start at the beginning with. Let's review how we did with June. And again, I apologize that this is a little tiny, but what we're looking at here is reviewing how well we did. At the last settlement, we identified some key areas that we wanted to try to focus on. Oftentimes, we consider ourselves just smaller, we look at this from a county perspective, but what I wanted to start presenting at these conferences are how we did as a group, how we did as a whole. A few of the metrics that we want to use to both grade how well we're doing in terms of training, communicating some of these changes, explaining what our expectations are listed in this first column on the left, the primary grading metric. The average submission date for when we received the information, how long before we were able to, the second one is how long before we were able to issue a pre-approval notification. The third one is the total number of submissions. Fourth one, the counties that were able to be approved on a single submission. Fifth one, the final number of counties that received their final approval before June 30th. And the last one, total funds collected. Now, on the far right-hand side, the top two are marked in green. Based on the goals that we set in June, each metric was given a pass or fail grade. Now, according to this one, we only went 2 for 6 in achieving those goals, but that doesn't explain why I'm so happy. Okay. So the hard part with setting up any metric is it's easy to put on a slide whether or not you met it or not, but some of these aren't as simple as black and white. When we look at the total number of submissions, the goal that I had set was 183, which means an average of less than 2 total submissions from the county to our office before we're able to certify or before we're able to approve those files and move the county on to the next stage in the process. Now, we came in at 201, right, which is still almost a 10% increase or 10% decrease over the previous year, if you'll forgive me for some pretty creative rounding. Now, but what does that mean? Now, if it takes our office, or every time we receive a submission, whether it be June or December settlement, we start the entire process over again, from the first step to the last step, to make sure that a change hasn't impacted another one of the checks that we're performing. If the state auditor's office takes 30 minutes per review, right, from the time we receive it to the time that we're done with it, if that takes us 30 minutes, this reduction of only 20 submissions is almost 8 hours. So we're looking at a full day that was saved by reducing the total number of submissions, and that's the reason why we want to continue to use this as a primary metric. Now, a decrease of that size, saving a full day is well worth tracking. It is a testament to how well that you guys are doing. The idea that this metric worked. Now, we still have a little ways to go before we get down to that 183, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. Now, the second metric I wanted to take a look at is the counties with 1 submission. Going from 24 to 31 is still a pretty remarkable increase, right? Now, imagine how much time that saves, not only for the state auditor's office, but for your offices as well. I mean, the 30 minutes that I estimated didn't include the time that it would take to type the email, the time that it would take for you to contact your tax and billing, to resubmit and then wait for another response. This is a fantastic increase, although not as large as we like, still have a little way to go to get to that 46.5 or more than half of the room being able to be approved on their first try. It's still definitely a step in the right direction. Now, the last 2 metrics on this page are a little bit more on the black and white side. Now, the idea that all 92 counties are trying to be, our goal is to make sure all 92 counties receive their final approval prior to June 30th, or in the case of the December settlement, December 31st. Now, in this case, we still came up a little bit short of what we were aiming for. Now, in 2015, there were 85 counties of the 92 received pre-approval, but there was $11 million, or 11% of the total collections of that time period, that we weren't able to collect prior to the statutory due date. And we dropped that considerably in terms of the total numbers of dollars, leaving less than 1%. Now, our goal is still 0, but still a fantastic turnaround in less than 1 year. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll take a look at the December settlement goals, but this is very promising. I mean, this is good news, or good news. This feels like good news. Okay. All right. So the second thing that I wanted to cover, the second topic I wanted to take a look at was excise reporting. Now, this has been a topic on the last several both spring and fall presentations to take a look at excise. Now, we still collectively do not have a near perfect record on how we're handling it. And I'm not going to end up recovering some of the information that's been covered in those previous presentations. We've got those posted on our website. We have the old presentation posted on our website. When I send out the new presentations, I'll make sure to draw attention to both the presentations and the slides that will cover the excise topic in a little bit more depth. Now, we still see excise as this self-contained little piece of the much larger settlement process, one that we can kind of just dominate and then move on to the more complicated parts of it. And we still see excise as this closed loop. We have this idea of how much money should be there. We've got a spreadsheet that's designed to assist in the reconciliation between what the auditor and the treasurer has. That spreadsheet is designed to identify the differences, but still acknowledge how much is being collected by both groups. And not for nothing, the auditor and treasurer excise spreadsheet is absolutely my favorite of the spreadsheets that we provide. I think it's straightforward in how it's laid out. Built right into it is an explanation of each one of those fields. There are only a maximum of 10 values that we'll be looking at collecting, and it contains a tutorial of what's being reported here and what it's being compared to. Now, beginning in June, or at the last fall conference, we took a look at the relationship between the numbers that were reported in June 15 as compared to the ones that were reported in December 15. And we saw a remarkable decrease, and this is what ended up being presented at the spring conference. Now, we saw a slight uptick in June this year in terms of the total dollars, but that's not necessarily why I'm presenting on excise today. The reason why I bring up excise today is that following the June settlement and following these numbers being taken off the documents that were submitted at that time, there have been 2 counties that have reached out for assistance in liquidating an excise imbalance that wasn't previously reported to the state auditor's office. Meaning the sheets that we saw in June, the information that we ended up approving, didn't accurately reflect the circumstances within either of those 2 counties. Now, I want to be careful here, because I don't want to discourage people from coming forward with issues like this one. In both of these counties' cases, we will work together to liquidate that excise imbalance, research it back to how it happened, figure out when it first occurred, and then ultimately help to get that money out the door. The request here, though, is to make sure that the sheets that you're submitting, whether they be excise or otherwise, contain the information that we know in real life. I mean, no one wants to admit that I don't like to admit when there is a problem, but we've got options available for fixing these, but we need to know that they are out there. Now, in some cases, these are excise, in some cases, not these 2, but in some cases, we see an excise imbalance that would show up within the last 6 months. So in June, you had a 0. In December, you've got 10,000. We've got a pretty good idea of when that imbalance would have occurred. Now, in other counties' cases, this could be an imbalance that dates back to your predecessor, your predecessor's predecessor. We still can help you liquidate it, but you just have to make sure that those spreadsheets that you're submitting to us contain the information that we would need to know to even begin asking those questions. Now, in that vein, we'll be looking at strengthening how we review excise. Although those changes won't be in place for the upcoming December settlement, by June 17, we should have that information. We should have a stronger review in place. And we've had initial conversations with the BMV, who are able to put together annual reports of the amount of excise that they're distributing. And although that's only one of the funding sources associated with excise, it does give us a tool that we haven't looked at before to try to figure out if the numbers that you guys are reporting to us are consistent with the amount of money that the BMV is saying that they had previously distributed. The other thing we may end up looking at doing is performing a review on excise that is comparable to the one that we're currently performing on the 105, the fines and fees, to compare your previous submission, either your previous submission June to December, or to compare the amounts that you've reported over the last several settlements, so that we've got a range in which we can compare those different values to. But there'll be some upcoming changes to excise that we'll be trying to implement in order to strengthen the process as a whole. Okay. Speaking of the BMV, okay, so the FTP site, the secure FTP site, the SFTP site is okay. At the spring conference, we talked about, last fall, we sort of debuted midstream that they were going down the direction of changing that file system from containing all historical information to having a culling mechanism, so that files older than 60 days would immediately start falling off. Now, as soon as we found out about that, we wanted to make sure to share it with you. And I think that during the December settlement, we saw instances where files that had previously been out there and available for use were missing. In which case, those questions had to go to the BMV that request had to go to the BMV to have those files recreated and sent to the county. Since that time, or during the June settlement, we didn't hear as often that was still occurring. It feels like you guys have already made the steps necessary to make sure that you're accessing those files, saving them down to your local drives as often as necessary to make sure that you'd have all the files that you need for settlement. In follow-up meetings with both the BMV, the auditor's IT department, and the state's Office of Technology, I have got both good news and bad news. The good news is they're not going to change the good news is they're not currently receptive to the idea of switching it from 30 to a more reasonable 180 or 200 days. The bad news is they're looking at switching it from 60 to 30, right? Of the FTP site, I am told, was originally envisioned as a file transfer system, of a way for the state to move files to the county, but was never initially conceived to be a repository for those files, that they would be able to stay out there. Just, I transfer them to you, you take them down, and then we can get rid of them the next day. Now, they gave us a solid 10 years to get used to one way, and then they kind of changed the process on us overnight. But they're looking at tightening that window to eliminate the need for so much storage, or to eliminate the amount of information that's being stored there. What I want to encourage you guys to do is sort of threefold. First, make sure that your internal policy, the internal policy for your office or for the county as a whole, enables you to access those files, save them down as often as necessary to make sure that you have the files you need during settlement. Number two, make sure if there are files that are missing, now would be the time to contact the BMV to make sure that they have the request in writing for a file from 62 days ago, 65 days ago, 70 days ago. Now, obviously, you wouldn't have all the files yet, but if there are gaps in the files that you have, please make sure that you make that request as soon as possible. I would also request that if you will copy the auditor's office, that group account, the settlements at auditors, on those requests, the BMV will try to make sure that they are responding to you as timely as possible, that these requests don't get lost in the shuffle. But before we move on, nope, here we go. All right, there is still a concern about the watercraft excise distributions. It's still not happening as timely as we'd like. The BMV they're working on it. With the upcoming 2 excise tax cut distributions that are actually being handled by our office, especially the one for October, which is scheduled to happen sometime in mid-November. Accompanying the traditional email that we send out will be an additional memo from our office, based on the certainty that your watercraft excise will be coming in a timely manner. If BMV is confident that they'll be able to get that distribution process sooner rather than later, then there'll be an explanation of when you should be able to expect that last piece for your excise puzzle. If BMV is not confident that they'll be able to get that distribution process in a timely manner, I don't want to hold up the rest of the settlement process while you wait for this last payment. So there'll be instructions in that memo of the approximate amount that we'd be looking at including, and the idea that it would be excluded from the traditional excise period. So there'll be more information to come. We'll continue to work with the BMV to try to get that distribution done in a more timely manner. All right. So let's transition quickly to the upcoming December settlement, right? The preparation, the big one. Over the next few weeks, or in the next few weeks, we'll end up starting the traditional December settlement preparation. We'll put the files on the FTP site. You'll see a handful of memos letting you know those files are available, and letting you know those files are available. Now, I'd ask you to keep in mind that the December settlement is a significantly more challenging settlement than what we see in June. And that it generally takes, you'll generally need to allot more time for the completion of the files that you're used to seeing in June, and then any additional files that we only see generally during the December settlement. In addition to there being more documents traditionally included, there are also fixed totals, right? Whereas in June, we're just making sure that you are on pace to meet. In December, we're actually making sure that you have met those distribution totals. Now, if there is good news here, there's been no significant change between what we did for December 2015 and what we're planning on doing for December 16. So what the communications, the methods, some of the back and forth here, left, right, left, right, left. Oh, sorry. Some of the back and forth that we went through for last December will be consistent with what we'll be doing again this year. Okay. There are a couple of things I wanted to draw attention to while I have you. The first one is the idea that the state auditor's office can't review a spreadsheet separate from the entire submission, right? Since a lot of our review is based on how information is reported across several spreadsheets, we can tell you that you completed it in its entirety, but without having all the spreadsheets that we are going to ultimately compare it to, it's kind of like Schrodinger's spreadsheet. It is both correct and incorrect depending on how you look at it. Now, but before the settlement season begins, if you've got questions about something that you're expecting to see, if you've got questions about how something is going to be handled, or questions about where things are going to appear or which reports we expect to see them on, by all means, let us start those conversations. Let us have those conversations before the settlement season actually starts. Before the settlement season actually starts. Number two, although it is not actually required to be submitted to the auditor's office, we are still putting together a settlement checklist. We've got it reduced down to just 5 pages. This is a fantastic internal tool for you to review the information before you actually send it to our offices, including this is an excerpt from page 5 of that document that gives you an idea of exactly what it would mean, exactly what files will need to be included in your submission in order for it to be considered complete. The first 12 on the list, the ones that aren't in bold, are the ones that we expect to receive from everyone. But then, based on your county's configuration, we've got the 5 there down at the bottom that aren't applicable to everyone, but if your county has it or you're not sure whether or not you need to submit it, if you will reach out to us, we can answer those questions in advance. Okay. All right. The next one is, we said this one a couple times, but although it's one of the last sheets that gets created during the settlement process, that Quietus worksheet is considered part of your initial submission. What this allows us to do is cut down on some of the back and forth, allows us to have all the documents we need, and that when we give that notification of pre-approval, that we know that there's no further communication, there's no further documents going back and forth. Now, there are a couple other issues on the Quietus worksheet that seem to be that come up more commonly than the other ones. The first one being on that excise tab. It's quite a ways down there, but there's a very specific cell that contains the excise information as previously reported on the excise allocation and the reconciliation spreadsheet. That cell sometimes comes back into us without it being populated. We know what amount you meant to put there, but if you'll make sure that is there before you make the submission. The other two areas, the additional property tax quietus and the treasurer's cash property tax, are those tabs on the quietus worksheet are designed to only deal with positive numbers. Although you can balance the sheet by adding a negative to one versus the other, before you make your submission, if you can make sure that those two tabs are populated only with positives, it'll cut down the back and forth. Additionally, on that treasurer's cash tab, there is a proof. There's a proof down there at the bottom that validates that validates the quietus worksheet to make sure that the two sheets are still in balance. If that proof if that proof cell is in zeros, there's a 0% chance of being approved by our office of the submission being approved by our office. Okay. Got it. Okay. Now, although not required in all cases, I want to continue to encourage you to provide preemptive explanations for things that may look a little bit unexpected. These are where you see the change, where you're able to provide an explanation before you even send it to us, just reduces any need for us to even ask the question. Now line 7 and line 42 on the 105, if there's a value there, yeah, we're going to need a written explanation. But if you saw an increase or a decrease, if you saw a spike and you've already looked into it, assume that we're going to ask, just include it right with your submission, whether it's in the body of the email, whether it's in the body of the email submission or whether it's a separate file that's included. If we know that you've already looked into this, if we know that we've already asked about this one, if this was already something that you were tracking, you fully expected to happen, just let us know in advance. It'll then cut down the back and forth that we see of asking questions that you already know the answers to. Okay. Right. Quickly, just to touch on some of the terminology, that notification of pre-approval is an indication that we have received all the spreadsheets that we need to, that we've confirmed that they balance the way that we've expected them to, that there is no further communication back and forth between us. Everything is fantastic. Now, the final, the final approval designation is an indication that not only have we received all those spreadsheets, but we've also received any balance, you've successfully remitted and we have deposited any money that we were expecting to move from the county to the state. Now, of course, that includes the excise that gets included during the settlement that we're reviewing, but it also includes things like your judge's supplemental balance, the submission of your semi-annual fines and forfeitures. We want to make sure that we've received everything that we needed to. So prior to receiving that final approval notification, there is still some outstanding balance between our two offices. Okay. So let's take a look at the December goals. So what we have here is a comparison between how we did in December of 15 and then what we're aiming for in December 16. Now, many of these are very similar to the ones that we saw during June, but with number of submissions and the counties that are able to be approved on one try, we want to keep those two on the list because those two more than any other one indicate how well we are collectively doing in our that the state is doing in its preparation for you guys going through the settlement process. Final approval, funds collected, we're still looking at, those are the black and white ones. We want to make sure all 92 counties have had an opportunity, or have submitted all the spreadsheets they've needed and then remitted any money that needs to be collected by the state prior to December 31st. Something else there. Sorry. The electronic payment policy should help considerably with meeting the funds collected by December 31st. I mean, it cuts down the amount of time we need to move money from one place to the other by making sure that by it's allowing it to arrive electronically. Now, but that's not going to fix everything. Please make sure that you have got ample enough time that not only can you make the submissions, but potentially not only can you make the submission to the auditor's office, but we can potentially do any back and forth that we need to validate those figures, and then for the money to arrive at our office. The last thing on that list the last one on that list is counties with an excise imbalance. If we had 15, well, let's get that number back down to 0. Let us dominate excise. Okay. So that takes us through settlement. Now, that's enough of the appetizers. Let's get to the main course. In Fort Wayne, in the spring, I set a personal best in terms of presentation length. I think I presented for 7 hours. If you listen real close, I might actually still be talking in Fort Wayne about the upcoming Gateway Initiative. Now, what this is the project to move the abstracts from the spreadsheets that we have come to know and love to an upload process of performing an electronic review on that same information. Now, the change here can't be understated. I mean, can't be understated. Can't find my place. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. It is as revolutionary as it is massive. I mean, this is a pretty significant change in the way that we want to handle this one. I mean, but not only is it going to change the abstract completion, review, and submission process, but it is going to transform the way that we're able to interact with abstract information. And it's also going to move us a little bit further away from data entry, which never hurts. And perhaps we'll save a tree or two. So since conference, what has happened? We have made significant progress in the last 4 months, which includes multiple meetings with volunteers from the county to solicit their feedback on the review process we've done, the review process that they would prefer that we would do. Some of the checks, some of the things we don't ask for, some of the polling them for information on some of the checks that they do that are superior in ways to the one that the auditor's office is performing. We've met with the tax and billing software vendors. All 4 software vendors have been to our office several times to talk about how this change will impact them, to talk about the development of the site itself. Recently, or within the last month, they've even received the file specifications, right? The DNA of what will ultimately become the electronic version of the abstract. They've begun programming those spec files so that they can produce those, so that we can start to see how, so we can start to sort of quantify the relationship between what was previously used to report the abstract and what would be created to produce an electronic version of the same abstract. This is an exciting time. Now, when I originally was presenting, one of the things we had talked about was the idea that we were expecting to go live with this one as early as January 1st, 2017, meaning that the abstract that we will be creating next year, it was our goal to be able to perform that electronically, to perform that through Gateway. Unfortunately, we will not be able to make that time period. Now, although we could have something, in addition to some things we've created, we also have a working sandbox, an environment that is proven, an environment that shows that the information that we're loading in electronically contains the same information as we're seeing on the abstract. If we were to go live this January, we could have something in place. But the additional 12 months will give us an opportunity to do further user testing, design the training for your offices, to work out some of the bugs, to design the reports that we'll need to, design the reports that the Gateway will be able to come out with. It'll give us a chance to, put the bells and whistles that we want to make sure are included. Our goal here is to make sure that this thing shines right out of the box. The extra 12 months will give us more than enough time to make sure that that happens. Okay, so this means that for the upcoming abstract, what we're going to see next year, we're going to be going through a process very similar to the ones that we did this year, which will include, but not limited to, working with you to fill out another pre-abstract survey, working with the counties to figure out the property tax relief calculation, a version of the abstract being completed manually and submitted to our office, AOS going through a very similar review, and then issuing the notifications of pre-approval or final approval. But although the process will be very similar to was last year, there is still a difference, and that difference is that the gateway project is there. In addition to submitting through the auditor's office, your tax and billing software vendors will be able to generate the files that will go through Gateway. Now, before we get into the training and before we get into the official debut, you will have the opportunity to interact with your information. In the restaurant businesses, I've heard it referred to as a soft opening. At this point, there are about 25 counties that have access to the test environment, a sandbox tool that looks like production, that acts like production, but there's no risk that you can break anything, that you can click on every link, that you can press every button, you can find out what this does, you can see how the information looks. By January 1st, all 92 counties will have access to that same sandbox. So once you've completed your review with the auditor's office, as you're completing your review with the auditor's office, as you're waiting for us to email you back or to send out the next piece of information, you will have both the tools provided by your tax and billing vendor and an environment which you can go through, an environment that you can use to see what this will look like when we go live in 2018. Abstracts are hard enough, but part of at least from our end, part of what makes them so challenging is the idea that we only ever really see them once a year, and then it's on to the next fire. This tool you can use this tool will be available to you and your staff to make sure that if they have got time and just want to see how it interacts, if they want to practice, if they just want to see what they'll be required to do next year, they'll have an ability to do that. Okay, but that comes with a catch. I mean, this is very much your opportunity to provide as much feedback as you can that will help ultimately drive what the final product would look like. Some of the best ideas the best ideas for how the information should be laid out, how the information should be reviewed, will come from the people in this room or members of your staff. The more you can tell us, the more you can tell us, the more fingerprints you'll have on the process as a whole. Okay. Now, I have got one more thing I want to cover, but I've got no slides for this one. Okay. I have the utmost respect for the people in this room, for what you're able to do, for how you're able to do it, for the service that you provide your units, for the service you provide your county, for the service you provide the state. And the utmost respect for your time. I realize that the state auditor's office isn't the only people that darken your doorstep, but the partnership that we have, the response times, the information that you're able to send to us, the requests, the strange questions, the fishing expeditions that you indulge. I appreciate those. I hope that you see the state auditor's office as an ally in this process. Or sorry, more ally, less dictator. And then that you feel like a partner in a lot of these changes in the processes that we're making. I hope you see us as an introduction or as a starting point for questions that you have for the state. Okay. Now that's my introduction. But I want to tell you a story. So on August 15th, not the settlement department, but I personally processed the Riverboat Revenue Sharing Distribution. That is a annual $33 million distribution to the 84 counties that don't have a casino within its borders. That distribution is done exclusively on the basis of population. That distribution is done exclusively on the basis of population. The population figures are updated by the auditor's office annually, and this year it was me who updated those population figures. What I didn't realize is that I made a mistake as I was updating the population figures. Long story, I made a mistake. So we did our distribution based on population, but if we don't have the right population for everyone, it means that the distribution was wrong. Now, as much as I want to end this story with, I was so smart that I found it, that isn't how this one ends. I'd actually like to embarrass one of your colleagues. It was found by Allen County. Deputy Auditor Nick Jordan noticed a decrease in the amount that we had distributed. Spent some time online researching why that could have been, and then asked that question to our office, and he was absolutely right. When you received your second distribution, the Riverboat Revenue Sharing Supplemental, what that represented was the difference between what you received the first time and what you actually should have received, if I wouldn't have made that mistake. This last part of the presentation is kind of talk to you about the County Auditor Bill of Rights. When dealing with our office, I believe that you have the right to know how we're doing our calculations. You have the right to understand what we're providing and what we want you to do with it. And you have the right to, I wrote this down so that I wouldn't forget. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, and you have the right to know how we're performing these calculations, where the numbers are coming from, where our totals are coming from, why you got this piece, why that piece went up, or why that piece went down. Now, obviously, there are ways to ask. And there are certain times of the year where it's easier to have these conversations than others. And on December 15th, I might take my phone off the hook. So, but that's the good news. The bad news here is that I also believe that you have a responsibility to ask. If the state auditor's office or your tax and billing vendor or your financial group is asking you to sign something or certify something or submit something, then it's important that you know what it is that you're receiving, what it is that you're signing. I mean, Suzanne has said it. I want to echo that one of the importance of your office, of making sure that that you have the information, or that the people that are providing you information are also providing you a context for where that's coming from. Now, on behalf of the state, or on behalf of the state auditor's office, if you've got a question, please feel free. I want to encourage you as much as possible to make us prove it, to make us show you why we're doing the calculation this way instead of another way. Okay. That's my soapbox. She said, "Thank you, Nick." Okay. So that's my soapbox, and that's my time. I want to bring up our closer. Ryan Petter's got a very short presentation, but something that's important, something that's very important, and something that's meaningful. I respect what this man has been able to accomplish in such a short time with our office. He's a rock, and someone I've come to rely on very much. But without further ado, please welcome Ryan Petter.
Thanks, Fred. So I have to echo that. Fred has been the role model in so many ways. So he works harder than I think a lot of people realize. He works hard. All right. He's here at 5 o'clock in the morning some days. He stays till 6 o'clock at night. He's putting in a lot of work, and as you may have heard, I'll be leaving the Auditor of State's office at the end of the month. So the move is due to personal reasons. It's unrelated to experiences here. I got engaged, and I'm moving to Ohio. Thanks. So it's an honor to leave you with a few departing words of encouragement and optimism. You're a wonderful group of people, and it's been a joy to work among you. Your authentic passion and daily dedication, evident in so many ways, have been a great encouragement to me, and for that I thank you. I don't need to tell you that the work you do has far-reaching impacts on local governments and businesses across the state. I don't need to explain how the schools, libraries, and other taxing units are dependent on the accurate and timely work done in your office, or how the librarians, firefighters, police officers, and teachers across Indiana depend on you to complete their jobs, or therefore how critical you are to the functioning of our state and the people here. Although our daily work consists of spreadsheets, emails, and phone calls, the impact of what we do is quite profound. This is the why that makes the work we do so meaningful. Through our work, we have the ability and opportunity to improve our society. The urgent problems of our day, such as discrimination, environmental degradation, injustice, and poverty, are influenced by the work we do. By performing our work with excellence, we can bring more wisdom, peace, and justice into the world. I encourage you to continue asking the difficult questions. I encourage you to keep improving, to be better today than you were yesterday. I encourage you to lead your team with joy and enthusiasm. I encourage you to collaboratively seek out innovative and creative solutions. I encourage you to face complex challenges with persistence, patience, and hope. You are the leaders and opportunity creators. You're the innovators and collaborators. You are the servants and justice makers. You are the heroes of our communities. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, sorry. That's it.